The desert was quiet. Only the wind moved the red sand across the endless plain. Jack, a human explorer from Earth, walked alone under the burning sun. His boots sank into the sand with each step. His skin was dry, his lips cracked, but he kept walking. He was looking for anything that would make this mission worth it. This planet, called Sirwin, had been terraformed years ago, but no one stayed long. People said it was cursed, haunted, or just wrong, but Jack didn't believe in curses. He believed in discovery. He stopped near a broken stone pillar, half buried in the sand. Strange carvings covered the rock. Old symbols no one could read anymore. Beside it, something glowed, faint. And Golden Jack knelt down and brushed the sand away with his hand. A small metal lamp appeared, shaped like something out of Earth's ancient stories. It had a long spout, a round body, and a handle shaped like a serpent. It looked old, very old, but still beautiful. It pulsed with a strange warmth, like it was alive. Jack picked it up and turned it over in his hands. There was no switch, no buttons, no tech at all, just smooth, polished metal and swirling designs. He laughed softly. Guess I should try rubbing it, right? It was a joke, but he did it anyway. As soon as his hand moved across the surface, the lamp began to glow brighter. Light spilled out of the spout like mist. Blue and gold, the ground trembled, and the wind stopped moving. A deep hum filled the air, like the sound of a giant heart beating. Then boom, a blast of light shot into the sky. Jack stumbled back and fell, eyes wide, from the mist. A shape rose, a figure of light and beauty. It was a woman, tall and glowing. Her body wrapped in flowing fabric that shimmered like stars. Her skin was silver blue. Her hair floated like a river in zero gravity. Her eyes glowed gold, and her voice echoed with power. You have awakened me, human, she said slowly. I am Alzara, Genie of the celestial flame. Jack stared at her. Too shocked to speak, he had expected, maybe, a light or sound, not. This Alzara looked at him with interest, like he was the strange one. You have rubbed the lamp of Sirwin, she said. You now have 3 wishes. Her voice was soft but strong. Like music mixed with thunder, Jack swallowed and stood up, brushing sand off his pants. He looked into her glowing eyes. 3 wishes. She nodded, floating just above the ground. Ask anything, and it shall be yours: wealth, power, eternal life, even worlds of your own. Jack was silent. He didn't want power or gold. He looked at her, again, really looked. There was something in her eyes, behind the light, a quiet pain, a tiredness deeper than any desert. He stepped closer, slowly. Have you always been trapped in that lamp? He asked. Her smile faded. I have known no freedom for 1,000 years. She whispered, I have belonged to masters who saw me as nothing more than a tool. Jack looked down at the lamp in his hand, then back at her. He could wish for anything, anything at all. But instead, he took a deep breath and said something that made her freeze. I wish you were free. The air went silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. Alzar stared at him like he had spoken in a forgotten tongue. Her glow dimmed, then flared brighter. No one has ever wished that, she said quietly. Jack just nodded. Well, maybe it's time someone did. Her body trembled. Her arms crossed her chest like she was holding something inside. The light around her flickered and cracked like glass. She let out a sharp gasp, and her body dropped to the ground, not floating, but standing. Her hands touched the sand for the first time in centuries. Tears, glowing like stardust, rolled down her cheeks. You do not know what you have done, she said, voice shaking. Jack knelt beside her, unsure what to say. Was that wrong? Alzara looked up at the sky, her lips trembling. No, human, she whispered. It was the one thing I never dared hope for, far above, clouds began to swirl unnaturally. Something ancient and dark had felt the shift. A change had been made, rule broken. A ripple went out across space, and something was coming. Alzara stood again, this time on her own feet, her power shifting and unstable. Jack didn't know what was happening, but he had a feeling that his first wish had changed more than just one life. It had awakened something far greater and far more dangerous. And this was only the beginning. Jack sat on the sand, still holding the strange lamp in his hands. The sky above him had dark clouds now. Even though it was clear a moment ago, the desert wind blew stronger. Cold and sharp Alzara stood nearby, looking at her own hands like she had never seen them before. She wasn't floating anymore. She was standing on her own. For the first time in 1,000 years, but something was wrong. She looked afraid. Jack walked to her slowly. "Are you okay?" Alzara didn't answer. Her silver blue skin shimmered under the strange sky. But her eyes, those golden glowing eyes, were full of panic. "I feel it," she whispered. "The seal is broken, but not fully." She turned to Jack, her voice shaking. "Your wish touched the curse, but it didn't destroy it." Jack blinked. "But I wished for your freedom." "Yes," she said softly, "and part of me is free now. But not all of me." She pointed at the lamp, now dull and cold in his hand. "That object is still a prison, holds the chain that binds my soul." Jack stared at it, confused. So the wish didn't work. "It did," she said. "But it only broke the surface." Alzara walked a few steps away, her feet pressing into the sand like she was learning to walk again. "You must understand, Jack," she said. "My chains were made not from iron but from command, from obedience, from the will of those who used me. They didn't just trap me, they rewrote what I was." Jack looked down, feeling the weight of what he had done. He had given a wish, but it wasn't enough. Alzara was still bound, still part of something ancient and cruel. She sat down beside a smooth stone, breathing heavily. "I can feel parts of myself waking up," she said. "Memories, emotions, choices. Things I forgot I had, but there's pain too," she added, pressing her hand to her chest like a blade still inside. Jack sat near her. "How do we break the rest?" Alzara looked at him, her eyes narrowing. "There are 2 wishes left," she said carefully. "But they must be used wisely. The second wish cannot just be about power or escape. It must be aimed at the chains themselves." Just then, the wind howled louder. The sky turned darker, filled with swirling shapes. Alzara stood quickly, her voice sharp now. "We are not alone." From the sky, a flash of red light fell like a spear. Striking the sand in the distance, a shockwave hit them both, throwing Jack to the ground. When he lifted his head, he saw a tall figure standing in the smoke. It wasn't human. It was wrapped in a dark cloak with sharp edges and glowing red eyes. Alzara's body trembled, her glow flickering like a candle in a storm. "No, it's him," she whispered. "Malkaz." Jack stood up, brushing sand from his face. "Who's Malkaz?" She looked at him, and her voice was ice. "He was my first master," she said, "the one who created my chains. He forged the spell that turned me into a genie." The figure walked forward, slowly, not touching the ground. His voice was deep and full of poison. "So, you've made a wish." Alzara stepped in front of Jack, protective now. "You have no right to speak to me," she said, her hands glowing with blue light. Malkaz only laughed. "Your lamp still exists," he said, "and so do the chains." Jack felt a pressure in the air. Like the sky itself was pushing down. Malkaz raised his hand, and the lamp in Jack's hand started glowing again without his touch. Alzara gasped, falling to her knees. "No, he's pulling me back," she cried. "The curse still listens to him." Jack's heart raced. He ran to her, holding her hand tightly. "Fight it, Alzara," she tried to speak. But her mouth was clenched in pain. Blue light shot from her chest, linking back to the lamp like a chain made of fire. Malkaz smiled. "She will never be free." He said, "You are wasting your wishes, human." But Jack didn't listen. He looked into Alzara's eyes and he saw her fighting with everything she had. He held her tighter. "Then I'll use my second wish," he shouted. Alzara's head turned quickly. "Wait, don't," but he had already said it. I wish Alzara had the strength to defeat the one who cursed her. Everything exploded into light. The lamp burned hot and cracked down the middle. Alzara screamed not in pain, but in power. Her body lifted off the ground, energy pouring from her like a rising star. Her chains shattered one by one, glowing, symbols falling into the sand and vanishing. Malkaz raised his arms to block the light, but it was too much. Jack fell back again, eyes wide. Alzara stood now not floating, not weak, but alive, strong, burning with power. Her hair flew in the wind, and her eyes were brighter than the sun. She looked at Malkaz and whispered, "You shouldn't have come." Malkaz floated above the cracked desert. His black cloak rippled in the wind, and his red eyes burned with anger. He looked at Alzara, glowing with new power for the first time in centuries. She was no longer trembling before him. She stood tall, her hands glowing with blue fire, her feet firmly on the sand. Jack stepped back, watching it all unfold. He had never seen anything like this before. He had made his second wish, but now, things were moving faster than he could understand. "You broke your chains," Malkaz growled. His voice was like metal scraping against stone. "You were made to serve." Alzara didn't flinch. Her voice was calm and strong. "You made me to serve Malkaz, but I was never yours." Malkaz raised a hand and snapped his fingers. The ground split open behind him. Manned creatures made of ash and bone began to crawl out. They were tall, thin, with hollow eyes and twisted limbs. Jack's breath caught in his throat as they moved toward him. Dozens of them, maybe more, surrounding the area like a trap. Alzara turned her head slightly. "Stay behind me," she said to Jack. Jack swallowed hard and nodded. No arguments here. Malkaz floated higher, spreading his arms. "Your new power means nothing," he hissed. "You are still a genie, bound to the lamp still made of wishfire and command." He lifted a black staff from beneath his cloak and slammed it into the ground. The desert shook, and Alzara's knees buckled slightly. She gritted her teeth, her glowing hands dimming for a moment. Jack saw it, the control still wasn't fully gone. The chains were shattered, but echoes of the curse remained inside her. Jack's heart pounded. He wanted to help, but he had used 2 wishes already. Only one remained, and he didn't want to waste it. He backed away slowly, dodging a claw from one of the bone creatures. Alzara flicked her wrist, and the monster exploded into blue dust, but more came. They were endless. Malkaz sneered. "You think a human's wish can undo my design? I carved your soul into obedience," he spat. "I turned you into an object. You were never meant to think, or feel, or love." At that word, Luvelzar's body shimmered with a different kind of glow. It was softer, warmer, golden. She looked over at Jack, who was picking up a broken stone to defend himself. Something in her changed. She turned back to Malkaz and said quietly, "Then you made a mistake." With a roar, she launched herself into the sky. Her fists burned with light as she slammed into her former master. Malkaz blocked with his staff, the shockwave knocking sand into the air for miles. They clashed again and again, fire and shadow mixing in the sky. Jack watched in awe as beams of light crossed above him like lightning. Alzara fought like a storm, but he could see it was not easy. Every time Malkaze whispered an old command, her body slowed. Her glow flickered like a flame in the wind. He was still inside her. His voice, his control it, was still tangled deep in her spirit. Jack felt helpless. He looked down at the lamp again, still cracked from the last wish. He wondered if Alzara destroyed Malkaze. Would that finally break the curse? Suddenly, Malkaze threw her to the ground. She hit the sand with a thud. Her glow dimmed and her arms trembling. He floated down after her, raising his staff. "This ends now," he said. "Back into the lamp with you." Jack didn't think. He ran toward them and stood between the staff and Alzara. Malkaze's eyes narrowed. "Move, human." "No," Jack said, breathing hard. "She's not yours." Malkaze laughed coldly. "She is not yours either." Jack looked down at Alzara, her eyes full of light and pain, and then he did something no one expected. He dropped the lamp. It shattered completely on the rocks. Breaking into pieces, Malkaze screamed, "No!" He roared, "You fool! She will die without the vessel." But she didn't die. She rose, slowly, painfully, but on her own. Her hands burned brighter than ever. "I am not Wishfire," she whispered. "I am not Command. I am me." And she struck. Her light pierced Malkaze's chest, sending waves of golden energy through his body. He screamed as the light spread, burning through every word, every command, every chain he ever cast. With a final blast, he vanished into dust. The bone creatures collapsed, lifeless, as if strings were cut from a puppet. Silence returned. The wind was soft again. The sky cleared. Jack dropped to his knees, exhausted. Alzara floated down beside him and sat in the sand. Her face was calm, but tears ran down her cheeks. He looked at her. "You okay?" She smiled gently. "I think. For the first time in 1,000 years, yes. But it's not over," she added. "One wish remains, and we must use it carefully." Jack nodded slowly. He didn't know what that final wish would be, but he knew it had to matter. The desert was quiet again, but it was the kind of quiet that didn't feel peaceful. It was heavy, like something was waiting. Jack sat beside Alzara as the last rays of sunlight fell behind the dunes. Broken pieces of the ancient lamp still lay scattered around them. The air smelled of burnt magic, and something cold was crawling into the wind. Alzara looked up at the sky, her body glowing softly in the dark. "Malkaze is gone," she said, "but his curse isn't." Jack looked confused. "I thought." "You beat him, I beat him," she said, "but not the spell he left behind. The real battle is inside me now." Jack stood up and looked around. There were no more enemies in sight, no bone creatures, no floating shadows, but far away, a strange red dust cloud began to rise. It rolled across the desert like a wall, fast and angry. "What is that?" Jack asked. Alzara slowly stood, her face tight with fear. "It's the curse," she said. "It's fighting back." The sandstorm came fast. The wind screamed and the sky turned red. Lightning cracked across the horizon. Not white, but black. Jack pulled his jacket tight, shielding his face. Alzara stood tall in the storm, her long silver hair whipping around her. The glowing marks on her arms began to shine brighter. Her body trembled, but she didn't fall. The curse was planted deep. She said, yelling over the wind, "It was written into my soul, into my name, into every breath I took when you made that second wish. It gave me strength, but it also woke up the full weight of the curse." Jack could barely hear her now. The wind was howling like a living thing. He tried to reach for her, but a blast of sand pushed him back. He fell to his knees, coughing. Alzara's eyes turned white as her feet lifted off the ground again. The storm twisted around her like a living beast. From the storm, voices began. Two whisper-old voices, deep and cold. They spoke in an ancient tongue Jack couldn't understand, but Alzara did. They were the voices of her past masters. The ones who owned her, commanded her, controlled her. Their words weren't real, but they were sharp, cutting through her mind like knives. She screamed. Jack stood up again. Squinting through the sand, Alzara was floating higher, her body glowing too bright to look at directly, but she was struggling. The light around her flickered like a flame in a storm. She was being pulled apart, light and shadow battling inside her. He had to help, but how? Jack ran toward her, pushing through the wind with all his strength. He yelled her name, but the storm swallowed his voice. Still, he didn't stop. He reached her, grabbed her hand, and held on tightly. Her eyes snapped to his. Full of fear and confusion. Jack, she whispered. I can't hold it. I can't hold me. You don't have to, he said. I'm here. For a moment, the storm paused. The wind pulled back, watching, waiting. Jack didn't let go. You're not just magic, he said. You're not just someone's tool. You're a person, and people don't fight alone. Alzara's hands stopped shaking. Her body started glowing brighter, not from power but from choice. The voices screamed louder now, but this time she didn't cry. She faced them. One by one, the voices fell silent as she spoke over them. I am not yours. I am not command. I am free. With that word, the sky exploded with white light. The sandstorm shattered like glass, flying out in every direction. The wind dropped, the sky cleared, and Alzara fell gently into Jack's arms. She was burning hot with energy, but her smile was calm. I fought it, she whispered, and I didn't lose. Jack helped her sit down, both of them breathing hard. So, that was the curse? He asked. She nodded. The final part? It tried to break me one last time. But this time, I had you. Jack smiled. Guess we're a good team. Alzara looked at him, her expression serious now. There's still one wish left, she said. The third wish, sure choice. Jack looked at her glowing face, at the tired but peaceful smile on her lips. He thought about power, riches, fame, all the things he could ask for, and then he shook his head. I think I already made my wish, he said softly. You being here, choosing to fight, to live, that's more than anything I could have asked for. Alzara's eyes sparkled with emotion. But the wish still exists, she said. The magic is waiting. Jack looked at the stars above, then back at her. Then maybe it's not my wish to make anymore. She blinked. What do you mean? He smiled gently. Maybe the last wish should be yours, Alzara gasped. In all her centuries, no one had ever done that. No one had ever given her the final wish. The stars above were bright and endless. The storm was gone. The sky clear once again. Jack and Alzara sat together in the middle of the quiet desert. All around them, the sand was smooth, as if nothing had ever happened. But something had changed. Something deep and powerful. Alzara had survived the curse. Malkaz was gone, and now only one wish remained. Jack looked at the soft glow in Alzara's skin. She looked peaceful, but also tired. Like someone who had been holding their breath for 1,000 years. He spoke gently. You should make the last wish. Alzara blinked, surprised. No genie has ever been given a wish, she said, her voice small. They were only commanded. Well, Jack said, you're not just a genie anymore. You're you. Alzara looked at him and for a long moment said nothing. Then she smiled, just a little. It was the kind of smile that came from pain slowly turning into hope. But before she could answer, the sand under them shifted. A soft rumble echoed from below. Jack jumped to his feet. Again? Alzara narrowed her eyes, standing carefully. This isn't an attack, she said. It's something else. Suddenly, a round stone rose up from the sand near the spot where the lamp had shattered. Strange glowing symbols appeared on Its surface, Jack walked to it and brushed away the remaining sand. The markings pulsed with blue light. Alzara stepped forward, her expression changing. "I know these symbols," she whispered. "They tell the true story of the lamp." Jack stepped back to let her read. She placed her hand on the stone and closed her eyes. The wind stopped, and the symbols began to shift and move like a memory. Waking up after centuries of silence, Alzara spoke slowly, translating what she saw. This lamp was not just a prison, she said. It was a vessel of choice. It was created by an ancient race knot to trap Genie's butt to protect powerful beings from being destroyed by dark magic. Jack's eyes widened. "So, you weren't cursed to serve." She opened her eyes, golden and shimmering. "I was cursed later," she said. "Malkaz found the lamp and changed its meaning. He turned it from a gift into a weapon." Alzara walked around the stone slowly. Reading more, the final wish. "It's not just about what you ask," she said. "It's a key. A key that unlocks the last seal around my soul." Jack looked confused. "I thought your soul was already free." She shook her head gently. "My power is free. Yes." She said, "My body too, but part of me still belongs to the old magic. To the original law of the lamp, and the only way to break it is to return the choice." Jack thought carefully. "So you need to make the final wish. Not for yourself, but for your own freedom." Alzara nodded. "Yes, but I can't do it unless you let me." She added, "Because the magic's still." "Answers to you?" Jack stepped back, taking it all in. He could have used the wish for anything in the galaxy, but instead, he nodded slowly. "Then, I give you the final wish." "Alzara," he said, "it's yours." The stone glowed brighter, the symbols spinning like a wheel of stars. Alzara stepped forward, her body glowing golden once again. She placed both hands on the stone, took a deep breath, and whispered, "I wish for my soul to belong to no one but me." The desert shook again, but this time it felt warm. Light poured from the stone in every direction. The stars above seemed to shine brighter. The ground cracked open, but not in danger. It was releasing something buried deep below from the earth. A column of golden fire rose and surrounded Alzara. Jack shielded his eyes but did not move inside the fire. Alzara's shape turned into pure light. She floated, not as a prisoner or a weapon, but as something whole, the curse, the control. The ancient commands, all of it, melted away. The fire faded slowly. And Alzara stepped forward, not glowing, not floating, just herself. She was still beautiful, still powerful, but now she was human in spirit. Real, full of warmth, and free. Jack stared at her, smiling wide. "You did it," he said. "You're truly free." Alzara walked to him and placed her hand over his heart. "You gave me that freedom," she said softly. "I will never forget it." They sat beside the stone, now silent and still. The night was calm, and the stars above blinked gently. No more wishes, no more curses. Just two souls in the desert, one human, one once bound, both finally free. Asterisk, the stars still shined over the quiet desert, but the night felt different now. It wasn't heavy with curses or whispers of old magic. It felt clean, soft-like. The air had been washed free. Jack sat beside Alzara in the cooling sand. The broken lamp was gone, and so were the chains that once lived inside her. But one thing still remained: the weight of that final wish. Alzara stared at her hands, fingers curling slowly. They didn't glow anymore. There was no fire, no floating, no magic pressure. In the air, she was still powerful, but that power no longer controlled her. Now it answered her. Jack leaned back, looking at the stars. "It's funny," he said quietly. "Most people would have used those wishes for something selfish. I almost did too," he added with a small laugh. I was going to ask for knowledge, or maybe to live forever. Alzara turned to him. Why didn't you? He shrugged. Because then I met you. And you looked more human than anyone I've ever met. Alzara's eyes shimmered in the moonlight. I wasn't supposed to, she said. I was supposed to be a tool, a power source, a wish maker. But when you gave me the first wish for my freedom, I didn't know how to handle it. It hurt, she added, because I realized how broken I was. Jack nodded slowly. I think sometimes the kindest things hurt the most at first, he said, because they show you the truth. They sat in silence for a while. The desert wind whispered across the dunes like a lullaby. And then Alzara stood up slowly, brushing sand from her dress. She turned to Jack, her face serious. The final wish is still active, she said. The magic hasn't left your blood yet. Jack raised an eyebrow. What happens if we never use it? She looked up at the stars, thinking it might fade in time, she said, or it might stay in you forever. Like a sleeping ember, he stood up next to her. Is that a problem? She gave him a half smile. Only if someone tries to steal it from you. He blinked. Wait, people can do that? Some can, she said, but they'd have to find you first. Jack looked around at the endless, empty desert and smiled. Good luck with that. They both laughed softly. But then Alzara's smile faded again. There's one more truth I haven't told you yet, she said. Jack tilted his head. What is it? Alzara walked a few steps away, her voice low. When a genie is freed, truly freed, she doesn't live forever. Jack's heart skipped. What do you mean? She turned to face him, her expression soft. I've lost the magic that kept me timeless, she said. Now, I will age. I will breathe like you, sleep like you, and one day, I'll die like you. He looked at her in silence. She looked almost afraid. Not of death, but of how he would react. Jack stepped forward and took her hand gently. Good, he said with a smile. She blinked, confused. Good. Jack nodded, because now you get to live a real life. Alzara's breath caught in her throat. No one had ever said that to her before. She had been feared, worshipped, controlled, but never seen like this, as someone who deserved an ordinary human life. Then let me ask you something, she said, voice trembling. If you had one more wish, and you could do anything with it, what would you wish for? Jack thought about it for a moment. He looked into her eyes and answered simply. I'd wish you never had to be alone again. She stepped back, her hand still in his. That's not a command. She whispered. It's not, he said. It's just how I feel. The stars above flickered just once as if the magic in the world was listening. And then something strange happened. The magic in Jack's blood, the final wish, began to glow. But it didn't move toward him. It moved toward her. Alzara gasped. The magic was offering itself to her. The final wish wasn't his anymore. It had chosen her because she was no longer a genie. She was the one who had earned the right to choose. I don't want power, she whispered. I don't want more magic. She looked up at Jack, eyes wet. I just want one thing. Jack waited, heart beating fast. I wish, she said slowly, for a life. With you, the magic glowed once, warm and soft. No explosion, no blinding light. Just a small pulse that spread through the night sky like a heartbeat, and then it faded. No more wishes, no more chains, no more curses. Alzara was no longer a genie, and Jack was no longer a stranger in the desert. They were just two people standing under the stars, ready to build something real, something human, together. The desert was quiet again. No magic storm filled the sky. No ancient curse waited in the shadows. Everything was still, peaceful, and calm. But something had changed. Not just in the air, not just in the broken remains of the lamp. Something had changed in Alzara's heart. And in Jack's too, they stood together, their fingers gently touching. There was no more glow in her skin, no more chains in her soul. She was no longer a genie. She was simply Alzara, and for the first time in over 1,000 years, she was free to decide what to do next. Jack glanced toward the horizon, where the stars met the dark sand. "Looks like we made it through," he said. Alzara smiled softly. "We did." He looked at her, eyes filled with quiet wonder. "What now?" he asked. Alzara looked up at the stars. Her silver hair swayed gently in the desert wind. "I could leave," she said honestly. "I could go to the stars, start a new life somewhere far from here." Jack nodded slowly, his voice steady. "You could." She turned toward him, her expression unreadable. "But I don't want to," she said. "I've traveled across galaxies, seen suns rise over crystal worlds, walked among the ancient moons, but I've never belonged anywhere." Jack took a step closer. "You don't have to go," he said. "You can stay." Her eyes shimmered. "With you." He nodded. "If you'll have me." Alzara smiled, warm, wide, and filled with life. She nodded once. And that one small gesture felt louder than thunder. "Yes," she said. "I will stay." Days passed. The desert softened. The winds grew quiet and gentle. Alzara and Jack built a small home near the ruins where they had first met. Stone by stone, hand in hand, they shaped a new life together. Not as genie and master, but as two equals who had survived the impossible. At first, Alzara struggled. Simple things confused her: how to sleep through the night, how to cook a meal, how to rest without fearing a voice would command her again. Jack was patient. He never rushed her, never made her feel small for asking questions. Every day she learned something new: how to laugh at silly jokes, how to enjoy a quiet sunset, how to sing softly under the stars. One night, as they sat outside under the clear sky, Alzara held a small clay cup in her hands. "Did you know?" she said with a grin. "This drink tastes better when I choose to drink it." Jack chuckled. "Everything's better when it's your choice." She looked at him with eyes full of light. "I used to think I was only made for service," she said, "that I had no value outside of granting wishes." Jack leaned in, resting his head against hers. "You were never made for that," he whispered. "You were forced into it, but who you are now, that's the real you." Alzara didn't answer. She didn't need to. She just smiled and leaned into his warmth, for the first time in her life. Silence didn't feel like a prison, it felt like peace. Weeks turned into months. They planted seeds near their home. Alzara shaped the water with her remaining energy, just enough to help the soil, but not too much. She wanted the plants to grow on their own. She watched them rise from the earth with pride. It reminded her of herself finally growing after centuries of being buried. One evening, while watching the golden sky turn to purple, Jack turned to her. "You ever miss it?" he asked. "The power, the magic, the stars?" Alzara thought for a moment, then shook her head. "I don't miss being a tool," she said. "I miss the stars sometimes, but I found something brighter here." Jack smiled. "What's that?" "You," she whispered. "And this?" She stretched out her arms, motioning to the little house. "The garden, the sky, this life," she said. "It's more than I ever thought I could have." A shooting star passed overhead. Jack pointed. "Up, make a wish." Alzara laughed. "I think I've made enough wishes for 1,000 lifetimes. Then just enjoy it," he said, and she did. The past never fully vanished. Sometimes, at night, she dreamed of chains, of burning lamps, of dark voices. But every time she woke up, Jack was there. And with time, the dreams faded. Not forgotten, but no longer in control. One morning, she placed her hand on the old stone where the truth about the lamp had been revealed. She whispered, "Thank you," not to the stone, not to the magic, but to the world for letting her finally live. She turned back to Jack. who was waving at her from the garden. She smiled. The genie was gone, but the woman had stayed. Not because she had to. Not because she was bound, but because she chose. 2. And that choice, simple, powerful, human, was the greatest magic of all.